Okay, at point 8 we can also see a note. This is column lefts shall be tension lefts. So all column lefts are going to be tension lefts. Okay, now at point 9 it says hooks of rebar. It says for all rebar provide 90-degree standard hooks L bent if not shown in the drawings. So if we look at the hooks, let's say we did a beam and we provided hooks here. As you can see that they're not specified, the angle is not specified, what kind of bend it is not specified here. So whoever is going to do the beam structural detailings, and they're going to look at this drawing and they're going to say, hey, there is no specification here, how can I conduct this? I don't know what angle I should bend it in. So the answer to their question can be found in the general notes. Point number 9, it says hooks of rebar provide 90-degree standard hooks L bent if not shown in the drawing. Since it is not shown in the drawing, then they're going to follow this rule, which they will find in point 9. After that, we have spacer bars. It says to support second layer bars in beams and slabs, use 25 diameter spacer bars at the rate 30-inch center to center where required, wherever it is required. So we have already covered spacer bars, what spacer bars are, but we did not specify the diameter of the spacer bars and the spacing of the spacer bars, which can be found in point 10. So if you don't remember what spacer bar is, we have covered spacer bars in the beam detailing section of lectures. So let me show you once again. So the spacer bar is if we had two layers right over here, if we had two layers of rebars, just like that. Let's say we have two layers of rebar right here. So this top rebars are actually attached here with the tie bar, but these rebars are going to hang, right? They're going to hang. So if we take paint, we go to paint over here. Let's say this is a beam. This is the long section of the beam. This is the beam body. Okay, inside there are rebars. These are the top two rebars, and this is the second top rebar. And we have the bottom rebars. So these rebars are actually hooked here. So is the bottom rebars. But what about these rebars? They are not hooked there, right? So how are they going to stand there? So that is why there are spacer bars that are provided in that direction. Spacer bars are provided there. If you cut the section out, the section is going to be like, there are two bars here, two bars here. There are the secondary bars, and there are spacer bars that will hold up these bars. Otherwise this bar here is going to get bent like that. They're not going to stay straight, they're going to get bent. So that they do not get bent, we use spacer bars, and we use spacer bars at a certain spacing distance so that all of the bars at all locations are straight. They're not hanging at somewhere. For example, if you give a spacer bar at this location, let me take a razor. Okay, let's say that if you give two spacer bars only, one at the beginning and one at the end, the beam is still going to hang, right? The beam is still going to hang. It's still going to hang. And if you give 4 spacer bars, the hang is going to be lessened, but the rebar is still going to hang. So you need to provide spacer bars fully throughout the beam at a certain interval so that it does not hang anywhere. For example, we had two spacer wires right over here, this green one and this green one, right? So the bar length that is between these two spacer bars is not hanging because the spacing is appropriate enough for it to prevent the hanging of this rebar, this additional rebar. Okay, so that's what the spacer bars are. Okay, so you need to provide spacer bars so that this reinforcement do not hang. Okay. Alright, and the diameter of the spacer bars and also the spacing distance of the spacer bars is specified in point 10. So since in here we did not have any spacer bars, that is not relevant here, but in case the project had some beams with spacer that had 2 additional bars hanging, then the spacer bar would have required. That is why it says where required. So it is, if required, you should apply spacer bars. If not required, you should not apply spacer bars. Okay, right after that we have chairs. Use chairs of necessary dimension made of 10mm, 12mm or 16mm bar to support top bars, and they should be spaced at 30-inch center to center. Okay, so this is kind of the same, the chairs, and the chairs are actually there so that one bar does not fall on top of another bar. And if someone is working on the bars, for example, if we go downwards, let's say this is a mesh of bars. These are the top bars, then we have the bottom bars. Okay, so someone stands right over here. Let's say this is my feet. I'm standing over here. I'm binding the bars, and due to my load, the top bars are actually falling down on the bottom bars. So the top bars are getting bent. But if we provide chairs there, then when I'm standing here, my load is going to be carried out by the chairs, and that's going to prevent the bars from bending out. Okay, or this is going to prevent the bars from deflecting, whatever word you want to use for that. Okay, so that is why chairs are used, and this is the specification of chairs, how they should be used, how they should be spaced. Okay, so we have covered hooks of rebar, spacer bars, and chairs. Let's leave it at that, and we'll start from here on the next one.